And good morning. It's Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, whatever time zone you happen to be in. Welcome to the show. You're listening to us live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. We're also on Blackjack Television over on the East Coast, on milehighradio.com also, and of course on most of your major podcast platforms. You might be listening in on one of them as well. It's like Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, Spotify. We're on most of the major podcast platforms as well. So welcome to the show. I'm Chris Pardo. I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, coming to you live, and we're going to be talking about baseball today. There's only one basketball game on tap for today. No hockey action for today, but so it's enough to talk about as far as baseball is concerned. We're going to take a look at how well we did yesterday as far as the pros did in selecting the basketball games for yesterday, and of course the baseball games for today. We have three games selected for today to take a closer look at. The Yankees against the Phillies, you got the Royals against Oakland, and we have the Rockies up against the Reds. So that's the schedule for today. And also, well, like we said the other day, we're about less than 100 days away, probably closer to 90 days away from college football and NFL football as well. So slowly but surely, on these days where we only have maybe one sport to really deal with, to talk about and let you know in which direction the pros are going, kind of gives us more time to look at other things that are coming up and start getting ready for. In other words, to give you some information about some college football teams that we think may possibly improving this coming season. Of course, we'll go into some of that, kind of get you ready so you can start thinking about college football, because we've been doing some NFL talk as well. So we're going to try to keep you up to date as to what's going on in the NFL, try to get you ready, prepared, so that when the camps open up, you're just about ready to go. You tighten up here and there, get ready for that first game on September the 11th. Anyway, that's the story. So let's get ready. As always, if you've listened to the show before, you know that we usually start each show by talking about what happened as far as betting is concerned the day before in the world of sports. Only two sports going on yesterday of any major quality. That's the NBA and Major League Baseball, because no hockey going on for a while now. So in the NBA, the Suns were 2-point dogs. They beat the Nuggets 116-102. They stayed under that 223 number. And of course, now the Suns take a 3-0 lead in the second round tournament series. The 76ers, on the other hand, 2-point favorites, beat the Hawks easily 127-111. They went over the 224.5, and now they take a 2-1 lead in the series as well. The favorites are 1-1 against the spread so far, but they lead 8-3 straight up and 6-4-1 against the spread in this particular round. But overall, in the entire playoffs, they're 38-16, 34-19 against the spread, which puts them at 64% in the playoffs. The road teams went 2-0 against the spread on Friday, but the home teams still lead 6-4 against the spread. Now, in this round, that's the way they lead, 6-4. However, over the entire playoff situation so far, it's 28-25, which brings them almost to 53% overall. Now, as far as zigzag is concerned, Atlanta and Denver, again, 0-2 against the spread, fell down to 16-26 against the spread. They are now below 40%, down to 38%. Meanwhile, the over-unders were 1-1 yesterday, but the unders still lead 7-5 in this round, while the overs hold the overall lead, even though it's not much. It's just one game, 27-26. Excuse me. A little dry this morning. Anyway, in Major League Baseball, the favorites went 12-2. with the only upsets by the Giants, plus 157 on the money line against the Nationals. And the Marlins are plus 103 against the Braves. The favorites now lead 515 to 387. That's up to over 57% on the season so far as the favorites are concerned, with 34 games being a pick-em as well in some instances. The overs went 7-6-1. You had a push on Atlanta-Miami game at 7 runs. The over-under is back to 500 on the season for 451 to 451. So those are the two sports that we're interested in, by the way, as far as watching what's going on, Major League Baseball and the NBA. And, of course, the golf tournament's still going on. There's no hockey today. There's only one basketball game on tap for today. So as far as any selections in the playoffs for today, we don't have any because there's only one game, and apparently for some reason or other at this point in time, the pros don't seem to think there's any value into betting on either team, so there's no selection as far as that game is concerned. However, we do have 3 games on tap in baseball. Once again, we're going to look at the Yankees and the Phillies, the Royals and the Oakland A's, and of course the Rockies and the Reds as well. So that's the story there. We'll be back into the sports wagering zone. As always, we take 3 breaks in the show. Each one is of about a minute duration. So if that's the case, we'll be back in 60 seconds. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo, coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as come to you on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon Music Podcast as well. So once again, thanks very much for listening. Like we said, there's only one basketball game on tap today for the as far as the playoffs are concerned, and there is no selection in that situation. The pros at this point in time, unless they change later in the day, which may happen, at this point in time, they're not making a selection in that game. Perhaps there's no value, or they see no reason to bet either team in that situation. But just to bring you a recap on how well they're doing, yesterday didn't do so good. Philadelphia against the Hawks. They keep taking the Hawks. We've had the Hawks almost every time while they were playing up here against Philadelphia. Had the Hawks, that was a loser, of course. Phoenix Suns against Denver. They took Denver. They're the 2 dogs yesterday. Lost on that game as well. So yesterday they had 2 losers. And, of course, the day before they had 1 loser. And there was a push on the other game they had as well. So far this season, still doing pretty good. 39-26, 39 plays, 26 winners, still comes out to 66.6%, and that's not a bad way to take a look at it as well. Not as good as it was before, but like we always talk about, and we've talked about it during the week. I know we do have sometimes we have new listeners or different listeners on the weekend than we have on during the week. But if you kind of take a look at the pros and their percentages, they're somewhere in the 57, 58% territory. Every now and then they'll pop up into 60%, but they're always in that little edge. In other words, out of 11 bets, okay, they may have 10 losers, okay? That's why you got to kind of look at it. So that's the way it works out sometimes. You can't just look at them for a short period of time. You have to look at it over a long period of time. In other words, if you're going to follow the pros and you're going to bet on whoever they are betting on, you have to stay with them all throughout, because you can't take just 1 week out of the picture. 1 week may be great. They may be in the 70% bracket for that week. Following week, they may come back a little lower and get down to that 60%, 59% where they normally would be. So, or you may get in when they're on a losing streak. So you just can't just look at it just through one little perspective that, like, oh, boy, last week they're terrible. I guess that they're no good. No, that's not the case. It's up and down. If you've been doing any betting throughout the years, anyhow you could, with your friends, your relatives, through the guy down the block or whatever it is that you might be concerned with, it's up and down. It's like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down. Right now, they're trying to getting back to level, okay? They were up in the upper 70% bracket. Now, of course, they're coming back down to where they normally would be most of the time. So that's the story as far as that's concerned. In the meantime, we have 3 baseball games to look at. And just as a reminder about yesterday, we had 2 plays yesterday. Had the Padres against the Mets, and in that game, took the Padres. That was the loser. But with the Braves against the Marlins, in that game, we were on the Marlins, and that was a winner. So we had 2 plays yesterday, 1 win, 1 loss. The day before, we had 3 plays, 2 wins, 1 loss. The day before that, 2 wins and 1 loss as well. So you can see how it kind of works out. Is it going to come a time where there's going to be no wins and 2 losses? It's going to happen, or you're going to have 2 wins and no losses. Eventually, it all comes out to about the same thing. When it's all said and done, over a longer period of time, it kind of straightens itself out one way or another. So in the meantime, let's go take a look and see what's going on in baseball for today, see how the line movement is going, and seeing which direction the pros are going as well. At 4 o'clock, if the New York Yankees, who are 33-30, just a little over 500 this season, against the Philadelphia Phillies, who are just a notch under 500 at 30-31. Now, this is an interleague game, and they're coming off of some real successful series. The Yankees just took 2 of 3 from the Twins. The Phillies took 2 of 3 from the Braves. Now, in this afternoon's opening game of the series, the Yankees send out their righty, Jameson Taillon. He's 1-4 this season with a 5.09 ERA. The Phillies start their right-hander, Vince Velasquez. He's a little better. He's 2-1 with a 4.33 ERA. Now, as we look at the line for this game, it opened with the Yankees listed as a minus 126 on the money line as the road favorite, and Philadelphia as a 116 home dog. So the public is betting and laying the short money price with the Yankees. However, despite there's always a despite all this action that's coming in on the Yankees, the sport has been very big, but it's kind of tumbled a little bit from being minus 126 to minus 118. What does that mean? It means that there's we call a reverse line movement on the Phillies, who were the home dog, dropping them from being a plus 116 to a plus 108, because that's where the money is coming in. Now, the Phillies, they have value because they're a dog that's coming off of a win. They're a home dog, and they're a dog with a high total of 9.5 in this particular game. Also, because it's an interleague game, interleague games, the home teams with line moves in their favor have gone 65% so far this season. Now, The pros also appear to be leaning on the under as well. The total was listed at 9.5, with the under being juiced to minus 120, which means there's a good possibility that that number will drop to 9 before game time. The Yankees have been profitable as an under team this season. They're 37-26 to the under. Meanwhile, the Phillies are down the middle. They're right at 30-30 to the under as well. So in this particular game, the first game we talked about at 4 o'clock, you got the Yankees against the Phillies. The pros in this game are on the underdog, the Philadelphia Phillies. And also around 4 o'clock, you got the Kansas City Royals, who are 30-32, up against the Oakland A's, 38-27 so far. Now, these, again, they're non-divisional teams. They split the first two games of the series that they've had. The Royals won the opener 6-1. They were 135 on the money line as dogs. And then the Athletics bounced back with that 4-3 win yesterday, cashing in as minus 130 home favorites. So in today's rematch, Kansas City hands the ball to Jackson Kowar. He's 0-1 with a huge ERA this season. And Oakland counters with their fellow righty, James Caprillion, who's 2-1 with a 3.08 ERA. Now, the line, it opened with the Athletics listed as a minus 142 home favorite on the money line, and the Royals a plus 131 road dog. The pros are not outthinking themselves on this particular game. They're backing the better team at home with the big starting pitching advantage, as wise guys have steamed the Athletics from 142 up to minus 152 on the money line. Heavy money coming in. Oakland falls into that we call a sweet spot for these non-division home favorites. They're anywhere between minus 150 to minus 175 on the money line. That's considered the sweet spot in non-division games. These teams have gone 40-19, which is 68% so far this season. Now, Oakland is 27-15 as a favorite this year. The Royals, they're 15-23 as a dog. The A's are ninth in run differential and 20-18 at home. The Royals are a minus 19 in run differential, and they're 14-17 on the road. Now, we could also be looking at a higher scoring game in this game as well. The total opened at 8.5, and the pros immediately hit the over, forcing the odds makers to adjust that total up to 9. Now, as far as weather, the forecast calls for temperatures in the low 70s with 10 to 15 mile per hour winds blowing out to right center. So in this game, the pros are on the favorite, the Oakland Athletics. In the first game we looked at, the Yankees and the Phillies, the pros are on the Phillies. They are the dog in that game. We have one game left to look at, also around 4 o'clock, the Colorado Rockies against the Cincinnati Reds. But we're going to take our second break, and when we come back, that's what we're going to talk about. The Cincinnati Reds and the Colorado Rockies this afternoon. So once again, like always, like we said, we take 3 breaks. This is break number 2. They're all about a minute, minute and a half, somewhere in that area. So just as we say, we will be back into the zone right after this. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo, coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as most of your podcast platforms as well, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. Anyway, we just in case you just tuned in, we talked about two baseball games on tap for today, along with the third one we're going to cover right now. We looked at the Yankees against the Phillies, and in that particular game, the pros and the analytics seem to agree the Phillies, the underdog, are the team to bet. As far as the Royals against the Athletics, also a 4 o'clock game. In that particular game, the pros are on the Oakland Athletics. Meanwhile, let's take a look at another game around 4 o'clock. That's the Colorado Rockies against the Cincinnati Reds. The Rockies are at 25-39. The Reds are 30-31 for the season. So the Reds dominated them in the last night's game. They won 11-5. In that game, they were minus 195 home favorites. And in this afternoon's rematch, the Rockies start their veteran righty, German Marquez, 4-5 this season with a 3.91 ERA. The Reds give the ball to their veteran lefty, Wade Miley. He's 5-4 so far this season with a 2.96 ERA. Now, as we look at the line, it opened with Cincinnati, a short minus 135 home favorite. Colorado opened as a plus 125 road dog. Now, the public is riding the Reds. They're expecting another easy win from the favorite that's playing at home with a much better record than the team that they're playing. However, we've seen Cincinnati drop down from being a minus 135 down to 125 on the money line. Now, what this means is that the pro money is buying low on the Rockies, dropping them from being a plus 125 to a plus 115 on the money line. The Rockies have value. They're a road dog with a high total and a short dog with a line move in their favor. Now, Colorado is just 16-31 against righties this season, but it's actually 9-8 against lefties. They do better against lefties than righties. The total is 9, and some books are juicing up the over up to minus 115 on the money line. And once again, what that means is that there's over liability and there may be some changing in that number. The Reds have been one of the best over teams in baseball. They're 36-22 to the over. The over is 20-9 at Great American Ballpark where they play, making it the second most profitable over ballpark behind Angel Stadium, which is at 23-11. So once again, just want to repeat that. The over at Great American Ballpark, that's where the Reds play their home games. They're at 20-9 this season. And again, it's only second to the Angel Stadium where they're 23-11 to the over. So kind of tells you a lot of times, a lot of home runs, a lot of runs being scored. So in that particular situation, the pros are on the Colorado Rockies, the dog, okay? So taking a look once again at the three games, let's recap them real quick. Yankees against the Philadelphia Phillies, the pros and the analytics, and that game they're on the Philadelphia Phillies, the dog in the game. Meanwhile, Kansas City against Oakland, in that particular game, the pros and the analytics are on the favorite, the Oakland Athletics. And finally, Colorado Rockies and Cincinnati Reds. The pros are on the dog in this game as well, the Colorado Rockies. So those are the three games on tap for today. Once again, just to let you know about yesterday, we had two games yesterday, the Padres and the Mets. We had the Padres. They lost, obviously. With the Braves against the Marlins, we had the Marlins. They won, so we were 50-50 as far as yesterday was concerned. Now, today's another day. we're somewhere in the 54.5% bracket as far as win totals are concerned. So the pros are doing pretty good as far as that situation is concerned. So that's the story. And one other thing I want to talk about, because we have talked about this before, and I'm really not sure. Sometimes we mention things on Saturday that we don't talk about during the week and vice versa. And I just want to make sure that everybody, whether you're listening on the weekends or listening during the week, get some of the information that we have come up with to give you. And one of them really has to do with betting as far as uh, going along on streaks. Okay, as a rule, I try to kind of not really talk too much about streaks, because it's not rare that people want to bet on hot teams. They want to bet against cold teams, and that's pretty much the way most people really think. But in baseball, I don't consider a team streaking until there are wins or losses against more than one team. In other words, sweeping a bad team, winning 3-4 games in a row, or getting swept by a really good team for 3 or 4 games doesn't really mean much, as if the team continues the streak into another series. So after 2 series or so, that's when you start looking at how many losses in a row or how many wins in a row have happened. So that's at the time when I kind of look to kind of get on board. Okay. So if you listen to us over the past 5 years, you've probably heard us talking about betting on or against different streaks. Because the key in the whole situation, you want to find the ones that are going to last and not drop off too late. Okay. It's also important because you don't want to be fading on a streak. Okay. There's another saying says that if you're fading a streak, you can lose a lot of times. But if you're backing a streak, you only lose once, because once they lose that one time, you get off that team. Meanwhile, if you're fading them, you keep going and going and going. So that's one way to kind of take a look at it as far as streaks are concerned. You should have at least 6 games in order to call it a streak. Okay, that's very, very critical. So my advice to you: check the standings every day, see which teams are streaking, and kind of bet in which direction you want to bet. But also be on the lookout what we call the swagger and the anti-swagger spots. Okay, by that we mean sometimes after a long losing streak and the team finally wins, when we call the swagger, what happens is that sometimes they come back and they win another game right afterwards. Same thing goes with the team that has been on a winning streak. Once they finally comes to an end and they lose that game, generally speaking, as you look at the stats, they lose the second game sometimes as well. It kind of like a carryover. It kind of takes one more game before they get whatever it was prior out of their system. So that's just something to take a look at if you're betting baseball, just something to see and take a look at. And again, just something else to think about, no matter what system you're using. Okay, whatever you're doing with your system, well, you might want to tweak it. You might come across a situation where you like a certain game, 2 teams, they're a toss-up. You're not sure which way you want to go. Perhaps looking at a possibility that they might be on a losing or winning streak might be helpful in getting you to choose the right team in that situation. So that's the story with baseball. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, and like we said, college football, the NFL, just around the corner. Before you know it, camps are going to be fully open. They'll be wearing their pads. They'll be hitting. Next thing you know, there'll be preseason games. And after that, the season will be starting, and it comes very quickly. So sometimes, now that we got a little lull in the action, basketball only 1 game, no hockey, just baseball, this is the time to kind of sit back and take a look at what's coming soon. College football, NFL. So we're going to take a look at a couple of teams, and teams that are not the really big teams that you can only think of, like Alabama or Clemson, some other teams that have gone out there, recruited, and gotten better, what we think, so far going into the season. So let's take that break. When we come back, that's what we're going to be talking about. So we'll be back in the zone right after this. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone talking about college football. You know, recruiting in college football is probably one of the most important factors if you're trying to rebuild a college program, because if you're being versed in recruiting game, you shouldn't be considered essential only for coaches, not only for coaches as to how they're recruiting, but even if you're going to be betting college football. This will give you a better handle on how each team is going to be doing. Of course, there are naturally teams that surprise every season. There's always somebody that you weren't expecting that becomes very good, both positively and sometimes even on the other side, negatively as well. And a lot of different things kind of come into play that make these things happen. So from analyzing the recruiting rankings against other situations, we kind of came up with some potential teams that look like they're having some sign of some real quick improvement coming into this season. And one of those teams, the California Golden Bears. Last year, they just had 4 games that they played. They won only one, again, because of the pandemic. It was treated differently in California. And the 2020 season was really like a throwaway season, if you want to call it. California brings back a solid group, 19 starters coming back, including their highly rated quarterback, Chase Garbers, and coach Justin Wilcox just signed the best recruiting class in his 5-year history at Cal. So the scores his classes have improved in 4 straight years. Cal was making good progress as a program even before 2020. So I kind of look at them, kind of put it together to be a very decent team this coming fall. On the East Coast, you got Maryland. The 2017 and 18 recruiting classes of Maryland were ranked 18th and 28th. Okay, in the country, with super seniors now in play because of that extra year of eligibility. The players of those years are going to be upperclassmen, and they're going to be leading their teams this coming season. And that really looks good for Mike Locksley and the Terrapins at Maryland. Now, what also helps is Maryland played some very competitive football last season. They finished 2-3, scoring a huge upset at Penn State, if you remember that. And with quarterback Taulia Tagovailoa gaining some valuable experience and production. That's the other guy's brother. He's at Maryland. Miami, in the meantime, the 2017 and 19 recruiting classes ranked 17th in the country for the 3-year measurement is what they do. Now, that's proven to be a key factor in projecting success. A 3-year measurement kind of tells you how well the school is doing as far as recruitment is concerned. Now, most of those players are going to be upperclassmen as well. And Manny Diaz, the coach on the team this season, and the list does not include their quarterback, Derek King, who started his career at Houston and had a big year for the Hurricanes in 2020. He surprised a lot of people when he decided to come back for another run. Now, after a huge bowl game performance against Oklahoma State, I expect a big season from this guy. Miami should be right in the hunt for that ACC crown as well. And again, out on the West Coast, USC. The height of USC's recent recruiting success, as we see it, came in 2017-18 seasons. Each class ranked fourth in the country. Those successes came on the heels of back-to-back double-digit win seasons for those 2 years. The Trojans are just 18 and 13 since then. Now, after last year's 5-1 campaign, and combined with the return of their quarterback, Kadon Slovis, and 15 other starters, this could be the season that USC makes it back into the national spotlight. Now, the team has a good chance to head to Notre Dame on October 23rd undefeated. At that point, they could be 6-0. And that contest would certainly put this program back at front and center as far as college football programs are concerned. Now, one last team we looked at, Wisconsin. Now, wow, this has been one of the best programs in the country in winning the most modest recruiting classes. And recently, the Badgers have picked up the recruiting efforts, scoring programs' best classes in 3 straight seasons. Now we're going to get to see what this program can do with that higher tier talent that they accumulated. One such player, Graham Mertz. He's back at quarterback. He looked Heisman worthy in the first 2 games last year before losing some of his top weapons who got injured during the season. The Badgers didn't really recover until the final 2 games. Now, with the momentum of a big bowl win and bigger recruiting efforts in what they're doing right now, Coach Paul Chryst might have his best chance at a playoff berth yet. So the teams that we kind of see that kind of improved because of their recruiting are California, Maryland, Miami, USC, and Wisconsin. Just something to start thinking about as we get closer and closer to the college football season. And of course, we're also been looking at some things that are going on as far as the NFL is concerned as well. Now is the time to start looking at things like this. These are outlier items that you want to start putting together along with whatever other information that comes in for the rest of the time period, and put it together, and you'll have a pretty successful season if you do it the right way. So we're going to keep you up to date on information like that, and hopefully it'll be of some help to you when the season begins. In the meantime, once again, just to recap the 3 baseball games we have on tap for today. The Yankees against the Phillies. The pros and the analytics are on the Philadelphia Phillies. The Royals at Oakland. The pros are on Oakland in that particular game. They're the favorite in that game. Phillies are the dog in the first game. And the Rockies against the Reds. The pros and the analytics are on the underdog in that game as well, the Colorado Rockies. So that's the story for today. No hockey, 1 basketball game on tap. No selection in that particular situation. The pros at this point in time don't seem to think there's anything worth reporting on in that one particular game. So that's the story for today. We'll be back again tomorrow, as we are every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're here Monday through Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms. So if you want to get a hold of us, and we've been getting a lot of emails lately, send an email. Send it to thesportswageringzone@gmail.com. That's thesportswageringzone@gmail.com. So it's Saturday. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy the time with your family or whatever you plan on doing. Have a great weekend if you don't come back tomorrow to listen to the show. And also, if you're going to be betting today or tomorrow, we wish you the best of luck. So not only do we want you to have an excellent, beautiful weekend, we want you to have a profitable weekend as well. So once again, thanks for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, right here in Charlotte, North Carolina, on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Until tomorrow, thank you for listening, and goodbye, everybody.